Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is the first in a series of videos. We're going to do a Python Django with React build. So in the previous series, I did a Django API with a Vue front end. Here I'll be doing Python with React. So first things first, always when you want to start a new Python project, you want a virtual environment because you want to kind of isolate your dependencies. So I have virtual env installed, which is one way of doing. I have both pyenv to manage my generic Py version, and then I have virtual env to create project-specific virtual environments. And then there's another thing you can install called virtual env wrapper. Virtual env wrapper gives you a bunch of commands that make using virtual env a lot easier. So now I can just do things like ls virtual env, and it'll list all my virtual environments. So there's all the environments I have. So I should probably clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to clean up a few of these. And that I can just do rm virtual env, and I'm going to get rid of untitled. I'm going to get rm, well, let's do this. I'm going to get rid of Django because we're going to rebuild Django. I'm going to get rid of new env. I'll keep fast API and Flask. Remove virtual env, and I want to remove new env. Okay, and then let's just list them again for ls virtual env. And there we go. Fast API, Flask, and Masonite. Fine. Okay, and good. So now I'm going to create a virtual env, and this virtual env will be specifically for working with Django. So I'll use this anytime I want to spin up a new Django project, etc. So I type in make virtual env. So I'm making a virtual environment, and it'll be called Django. And what it will do is just create a new environment. So there I am. Okay, it was created. And now, and again, setting this up does take a second. So when you go to install virtual env and virtual env wrapper, make sure you read the directions very carefully, because it does require you to set up some like environmental variables and all sorts of stuff to get it working. But once you get it working, it does make life a lot easier. Your other option is to use an IDE like PyCharm that actually has like the creation of virtual environments built into the IDE, making it super easy to do it there as well. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to type in work on Django. That's going to turn on that virtual environment, which actually was already on. You can tell right here. So when a virtual environment's on, you'll see it kind of in your terminal. Now I'm using a prompt called Starships. That's why like my terminal prompt may look a little bit different than yours, but you'll still see Django somewhere in the prompt. Okay, cool. So now that that's done, we can now create a, and now when I take a look, if I were to do a pip list, there's like nothing installed yet. Okay, so I'm starting with like a fresh environment. That's what the reason why you want to use a virtual environment, because you don't want to have all, I don't want to have all my fast API installed, Masonite installed, Flask installed when I'm doing a Django project. I don't need those dependencies, nor do I need them when I deploy. So I need to install Django. So pip install Django. And again, pip is the package manager for Python, and that comes when you install Python. Although I do recommend installing Python using pyenv, so that way you can easily upgrade your version of Python when needed. Okay, and then pyenv, rbenv, like every like language has like a thing env, which is basically something that allows you to download multiple versions of the language and then switch between them, which is super useful. Okay. So we installed Django, which is all I want for now. Now I'm going to create a new Django project, which is, we start with Django admin. And then that's going to be start project. That means we're creating a new project. And we're going to call the project, we're going to create a to-do list. We're going to keep it simple. To-do. Okay, and you see here, there's my new to-do folder. So I'm going to reopen VS Code in that folder, open workspace, open folder, and I want to open up backend in the Django folder, to-do, And then here I have my to-do folder. Now notice that inside the to-do folder, there's another folder called to-do. Okay, that is sort of your main project folder. So this is sort of your root. So generally, like all your Git stuff, it's all going to be here in the main root. This is where this manage.py file is. This manage.py file allows you to access all the Django commands. So essentially, as we want to do commands in this project, so I'm going to create a new terminal. You're going to always use Python. And if you're on an older version of Linux, you might have to install Python 3 separately. So then you have to do like Python 3. But if you have PyEnv, you can switch which version the Python command is using, and you don't have to worry about that. So it'd be Python manage.py, and then you type in whatever Django command you want. Okay, a couple things you always want to do kind of right off the bat is you kind of want to generate your database. So we're going to generate migrate, because it always has like a... Now, if you've used other frameworks, generally you're thinking, wait, don't I have to create models before I migrate? Because generally the flow is I define sort of the type of data that I want. I then generate a migration, which is going to generate a file that says how to build my database, and then I migrate. Why did I skip those first two steps? It's because technically, by default, in the default project setup, there's already a migration created for admin and users. So that way you can have users right off the bat, so you don't necessarily have to like rebuild that particular model. It's one of the nice things about Django that it has some admin stuff built into it, which is pretty cool. You'll see later on, like the cost is there's a lot of other stuff that you kind of have to do a little bit more explicitly than you would in like Ruby on Rails, and certain things are just also have weird naming conventions relative to other MVC frameworks. So Python manage.py migrate, I do that. Oh, doesn't like it. Oh, that's right, because I see like I'm not in the virtual environment. Okay, since I reopened the folder, it automatically put me back to normal. So I have to do work on Django, so that way I can understand what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I'm back in my virtual environment where Django is installed, and I want to do Python manage.py and migrate. Cool. And then on top of that, what we want to do is you want to create your initial super user. It really only matters if you plan on using the admin panel, which I won't be for this particular tutorial. Maybe I will, but we'll see. But it's always a good habit to create it anyways. And also notice the database got created. So notice there's an SQLite 3 database here. Now we're going to eventually deploy to Heroku. We're going to use Postgres. So why am I starting out with SQLite 3? You'll see later on we're going to install a plugin that will automatically kind of set up all the Postgres stuff for it when we deploy. So locally when we're developing, it's just easier to use SQLite 3 because it's just built in the Django. It just kind of works right out of the box. You don't have to think about it. But so technically here's your database. Like that's literally it. That thing is your database. Okay. Now let's see here. Let's create our super user. So that would be Python manage.py and create super user. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna take the default. Okay, cool. So there is that, and that is complete. Okay, so basically in the next video we'll explore Django a little bit more in depth, but now we set up our project, and that is step one. We set up our project. Okay, and in the next video what we'll do is, even before we get started with our project, to me it's always a good idea to deploy early, deploy often. So this way you're not dealing with any of these sort of, like, you're going to be adding a lot of code, and you want to know that your stuff is working out of the box, so that way you can kind of better determine if anything breaks it later on, what it is that broke it. So in the next video we'll deploy it, then we'll start building our API, and then our API will be deployed, and then we'll start building our React front end as a separate application. Okay, I think it's a lot easier to build an API and then consume it with a separate React application versus trying to build a React application inside of Django. There's people who do that. I always find like that workflow to be more complicated than it needs to be. But different strokes. Okay, so I'll see you guys later on. Have a great day and enjoy.